Okay, let's get through what the stock market was for the 7 big oil and gas stocks yesterday. A massive gain by some of the big 7 bellwethers in the markets, being part of that. Thursday's 0.77% broad index gain. Look at the big 7. And we spoke about Forte Oil, the integrated energy trader, making a comeback. You need to watch this stock. 10.22%. A similar gain on Wednesday for a second day, north of 10%. This stock, less than 500,000 shares, 58.33 at the closing bell. On the top of that was Corn Oil, a smaller cap company, another retailer, unchanged at 39.50. Then you go to the gray shoot. In the third line, you find Mobile unchanged at 287. Also MRS, a much smaller retailer at 39.03. Then you flip that and you find 3 of the other game changers on Thursday at the marketplace on the oil and gas space. Oando added 0.1%, 2.03 million ordinary shares. Oando yesterday issued a statement clarifying some of the news and noise around the story whether the Port Harcourt refinery has been privatized or concessioned to Oando in partnership with Argip E&I. That's a story that is already in the news. Oando says the refinery in Port Harcourt is still on the books, owned by the Nigerian government, and it's not been sold. Seplat, 10.14%. Of course, the Forcados oil terminal, that export terminal, back on stream last weekend, now putting more oil in the Nigeria's total production expectation, 250,000 barrels per day from that facility based in Delta State. Then you have Total, 1.63%, a downstream retailer, finishing Thursday, 279.50. Okay, move on. That's about 5% for that sector for the trading day. Year to date, that's racing ahead, 13.1%. But of course, the big story was that Nigeria's oil minister, Dr. Ibekachukwu, says Nigeria spent about 4.74 trillion naira in 2016 for fuel imports. That's diesel, kerosene, and petrol, call it by street names. Then its imports total 20 million metric tons between January and December last year. Total local refining capacity for the 4 refineries we got is just 6 million liters. That's about 25% of total consumption of 35 million liters. He went on to say at the press briefing that repairing the 4 refineries will cost about $1.2 billion US dollars, excluding the pipeline repairs. So what's the state of the refineries? The deputy minister was quoted in the newspapers as saying clarifying what you call the rehabilitation versus concession or sale or the privatization. He says last year, that was about a year ago, about 13 months ago, that a deal was reached between the National Assembly and the BPE, that's the Bureau for Privatization, for the rehabilitation process, which will not be prejudicial to future privatization plans. He went on to say that in October, a few months after that, also last year, the NNPC gets a presidential approval to engage credible financiers to rehabilitate and improve the state of the refineries. And the possible partners were Ajip, the Saudis or the Qataris, and the original builders of the refineries will be invited for the repairs. And finally, he says the co-location story has been done. A public tender announced last April. Bids were received, analyzed, and winners identified. And discussions are still ongoing as to finalize with the NNPC Board of Directors and get a federal executive approval. Not yet. Still pending. A lot of stories there. Let's make sense of it with Dolapo Oni, who is the head of energy research at EcoBank. Dolapo, thanks for coming through on Skype.
Thank you for having me as well.
Well, quite a lot to chew here. The amount we spend on fuel import keep rising. This is heartbreaking.
I totally agree. It is. For a country like Nigeria that has a lot of crude oil and has, I mean, the installed refining capacity it has, we shouldn't be having that much, we shouldn't be spending that much on petroleum products. But then, I mean, we have to fuel the economy. So if the refineries are not able to supply, we have no choice but to import.
Well, if you look at that figure from the total foreign exchange that the central bank had to sell over the 12 months of 2016, that's quite significant. So that's a lot of money thrown back into the ocean, if you want to put it that way, when we could as well keep that money home if we have the refineries up and running.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, just to clarify a bit more on the figure, Nigeria consumes quite a lot of petroleum products. We consume in the region of about 20 million tons of various petroleum products. A larger portion of that is gasoline, but then you have all the other fuels, diesel, jet fuel, kerosene, and so on. And in fact, even last year, we did a lot of LPG imports as well, too. So all that factored in. But the actual portion that was spent on the petroleum product was about 3.4 trillion naira. And then we spent another 1.4 on logistics, on 1.3 rather on logistics for bringing those products in. Another thing you also want to remember is that last year, again, exchange rates were really weak. So the naira depreciated and it increased the cost of some of those products because we still had to consume the same volumes, even though our naira was now weaker. So we spent more in terms of naira getting those products in. But if you check the dollar amount in terms of what we actually imported last year, compared to maybe 2015. Yes, it was just a slight increase, and that was partly because we had the strike issues in 2015. So we didn't actually even import a lot of products in 2015.